Welcome to the April the 13th, 1999 taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie, as we bring you the history of our city and some of the very exciting people that made that history and are continuing to make history this very day. We're very pleased. This is our history tape number 365, and we're delighted to have from the Avion Village Mutual Corporation on the set at this time, three wonderful folks. And we're just so glad to welcome them today as the participants in our history as we tell you a little bit more about a very special group of people that live in a very special village here in Grand Prairie, Texas. First of all, I'd like to introduce to our viewing audience Mr. Bob Parker. Mr. Bob, I'm just so glad to have you here today. Thank you very much. And you brought your sweet wife Ruth with you today. Ruth, we're glad to have you on the set also. And Susan Shuffler, you're so far off, but let's touch fingers at least. And as a young lady that is the manager and the secretary of the corporation of the Avion Village Mutual Ownership Corporation of the World of Grand Prairie, Texas, we're glad to have you all with us today. And Mr. and Ms. Parker, with your permission, we're going to start with Miss Susan. Because Susan is a stem winder at the Avion Village complex, and we want to let her tell us a little bit about the history of Avion Village that is located on what is now Beltline and Skyline and Grand Prairie Road, probably and northwest, southeast 10th. Southeast 10th Street. Those are the perimeters of your village. Tell us a little bit about it, Miss Susan. And would you hold up a layout of the village so that everyone in our viewing audience might like to see that? And that is well, we're
Can I get it back a little farther so everybody can see?
No, they're going to get it back a little farther and get us a good see. They can back up that camera. Isn't that wonderful? And that gives you the layout then of, that sort of looks like a squash, doesn't it?
I call it a bent horseshoe.
A bent horseshoe. I'll go for that. That is really wonderful.
Because on the north is Grand Prairie Road. On the east is was Southeast 8th, which is now South Beltline. And on the west is Southeast 10th. And on the south is Skyline Road.
Yes.
But everybody looks for us on Skyline, but we're really not. We're on Avion Parkway.
Yes.
To get to Avion Village, and don't everybody rush down there because we do have a waiting list, okay?
Yes.
Avion was built because of the historical need during World War II for housing for government workers. I try to explain to people, if you've watched some of the old movies and everybody knows who Rosie the Riveter is, unless you're under 25. And then they go, who? But she had to have somewhere to live. The families of the people who worked in the plant had to have somewhere to work.
And that's North American Aviation.
It is now Northrop Grumman. It's been a number of names, but it started out as North American Aviation.
Yes.
Every street in the village, as people drive by, will see that they are named after either a famous person in the service, like Admiral Byrd, Wrong-Way Corrigan from World War I,
yes,
or an installation like North American Aviation became North American Place.
yes,
Vought, which was a plant in California, I believe, was named for Vought Place, where Mr. and Mrs. Parker live and have lived for a number of years. But they had to build someplace for these people to live, so they put together an idea under Roosevelt to build housing, temporary housing, with a long-term ability. They built, as far as I can remember, 22 of them in the United States, of which right now 11 still exist. They had a contest for building these houses, prefab. 2 of the houses, and everybody that lives in the village says, yeah, that was mine. It was built in that 52 minutes. No, it wasn't. I know where the houses were, but I'll never tell, okay?
yes, yes.
They put them together, they had a contest, and one of the houses won. They finished the houses. They started in May. They finished them in 100 days. They had people occupying them before the streets were down because of the need of some kind of a roof over your head. They had people living there before the water was turned on. We still have in our village 8 of the original people who moved in under those conditions in 1941.
Isn't that exciting?
I tried to get some of them to come today, but they're up in their years and
Yes.
not in good health.
Okay.
And said that they just couldn't make it on.
Yes, on
They-
such short notice.
Well, no, what they said is they didn't want their wrinkles on TV.
That's understandable.
When they built them, the houses looked like this. They
Was
had
it a-
large windows. There was no air conditioning. They had the windows would slide open, so all the whole front of the house and the whole back of the house could be opened up so that the breeze, the north-south breezes, could come through. These are what we call the flat tops because they have flat top roofs. Then they had the fourplexes. That, you can see, is an old picture. They also had windows, but their windows opened out, and they had no screens. Wonderful. Well, a lot of things have changed. Like my grandmother says, there's no good old days, there's today. Back then, right out here in the front, there was a hot water and a cold water faucet. So you could get your number 5 wash tubs out there and your washboard and do your wash if you didn't have a washing machine. Very few people had washing machines. These houses were built to last at least through the war, but in 1948, it was purchased by the Mutual Ownership Corporation. At that time, it became a private non-profit company. We are franchised under the state of Indiana and pay franchise taxes in Texas as a corporation out of state operating in the state. We are still a non-profit organization. The houses have always interested me. I came to work there in 1982, and it really interested me on the premises that you could have cooperative housing at such a low price, and that the people really all worked together. At that time, I was a bookkeeper, and there was another manager. The village was not in the best of shapes. In fact, it was going downhill fast.
And you have been there how long now, Susan?
Going on 16 years.
Going on 16 years.
The Mrs. Parker, who was then Mrs. Owens, her husband, came in as, A.J. Owens came in as, excuse me, he came in as my job, manager. And he got Mr. Parker to come back on the board again. And Mr. Parker served on the board, and they got a really good, strong management team between the board and the manager, and they brought it back up out of doldrums, added siding. They put in aluminum windows, took out the wood windows, they added siding.
Air conditioning?
The air conditioning is supplied by each individual.
I see.
You can either put in central heat and air if you want to, or you can put window unit heat pump air conditioners. Because of my family, I prefer the heat pump because everybody can keep their room whatever temperature they want.
Yes.
The thing that came to my interest, or brought me the interest of trying to get a historical marker, was I knew I was in the midst of something that was very rare, but I didn't realize how easy it would be until Miss Jackson contacted me. And she and the Grand Prairie Historical Society presented us with a plaque, I think number 41, I believe.
Grand Prairie Significant Landmark, number 41.
And got me in contact, ooh, that's bad English, with this Historical Society, Kathy Ritterhouse, is that pronounced?
That's it?
Okay. And with her help and Kristen Sylvan's help, who is a professor, now she is in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We got all the paperwork together and applied and have been granted our historical marker. But without the help of people like Mr. Owens, Mr. Parker, Mrs. Owens, don't, she's
Ms.
a
Owens
hard
Parker.
worker. Mrs. Owens Parker, excuse me.
Yes.
Ruth, she's a hard worker. She'll do anything to help keep the village going. She lives there, she loves it.
Okay, we're going to talk with her right now and see if we can't get a little bit of an update. And Miss Ruth, since you and Mr. Parker have a pretty long tenure of the two groups we're going to interview today, tell us a little bit about when you moved into Avion and your concept of it.
Well, I moved in well, my son was 7 years old
All right.
when we moved down where we live now. That was, what, 45?
Around 45, 1945? Okay. And you came, where did you come from to move to Avion?
We came from the farm.
From the farm. Oh, that was great. And
We lived in Dallas for a few months, but we wasn't satisfied over there, so we moved over to Grand Prairie. We moved on Grand Prairie Road in 8th Street.
did you by any chance, you or AJ, ever work at the plant?
He did. He worked at the plant for 27 and a half years.
27 and a half years. And did you ever work out of the home?
I worked at the cafeteria at Lee Junior High for a while.
All right. I'm going to get back with you in just a second, but I've got to let Mr. Bob get us up to speed on Bob and Reba Parker, his first wife that passed away a few years ago. But tell us, when you moved in, Mr. Bob, and your opinion about how wonderful Avion Village has been to the families that live there.
Well, I think it's a great place to live. We moved there in 1970, and at the house that I moved into was like the original, and so before we started putting in aluminum windows. Well, I did that myself, and tore the insides out. I rewired it, put in central heat and air, added on 2 rooms, 2 bedrooms and a bath.
Excellent.
And so I've got ties with Avion Village that has been there for about 30 years, and my youngest son graduated the year that we moved in there from South Grand Prairie, and the other boy had just graduated from North Grand Prairie.
Let's get both of their names in this record, both of your sons.
Okay, the oldest one is Robert Nelson Parker. He graduated from Grand Prairie High, and Stephen W. Parker graduated from South.
Okay, you split the difference on the Warriors and the Gophers. Okay.
Yeah, we had to go both ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know of a better place around here to live. I was telling one of my brother-in-laws the other day, if I was to win the lottery, I'd still live in Avion Village.
Yes,
and we've got wonderful neighbors, and everybody
Yes.
just looks out after each other.
Mm-hmm. And when your wife died and AJ passed away, you two got together and courted, and now you're married, and I think that's one of the most exciting things of the happenings in Avion Village. Do you have much of that going on down there, Susan?
No, because AJ and Bob
We're best friends.
were best
weren't-
friends, and Reba and Ruth were best friends. They vacationed together.
Yes.
And when they said they were going to get married, I said, well, you've known each other how many years? 40 years? I think
Yes.
it's great.
Yes.
You can't say you didn't know who you got. And they have been very happily married for
And-
the last, 3 years?
Yes, that is wonderful. Avion Village is so centrally located. Doesn't it make it wonderful for you to be able to get around the village, because aren't you a family?
Everybody looks after everybody else, and if anybody needs any help, all you gotta do is holler for the neighbors, and they're there.
And not just on your street, but don't you have ties with all of the people that have lived there a long time? Who is probably the oldest resident that lives in Avion Village, that's lived there the longest? Not the oldest in age, but the one that has been there.
Well, there's a toss-up. H.H. Freeman and Joe Freeman moved in the same day that Frankie Taylor moved in.
I see.
So
So it's
I
a
don't think
toss-up.
we go down to hours. Who moved in first?
There's not a running contest as to which
No,
one
we
of them
haven't
was the
got it
first.
down to the exact hour yet.
Well, I think when you do your state marker that we're going to talk about in our next segment of this, when we let the Parkers off of the dais and let the Childs come on and have a little bit of equal time. Before we leave you now, is there anything that you want to say, Miss Ruth, about Avion Village and how excited it's been for me, because at least you found a wonderful partner.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful place to live, and I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
And how proud are you of Susan for really hustling for a
Yes.
whole year, bringing this, or a few years, bringing it back up to snuff, and applying for a state marker, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. Isn't that going to be exciting?
Yeah, we're real proud of Susan.
Yes, all right. And we'll be right back with the rest of our Avion Village history.
If you got garbage in your hand, man, find yourself a garbage can. Don't throw your trash on the road. Don't throw your trash on the road. Don't throw your trash on the road. Don't mess with Texas.
And now, as we continue our interview relating to the Avion Village Mutual Ownership Corp., we have the president of that corporation with us today, and we're just so pleased to welcome Mr. Leonard Childs. Welcome, Mr. Childs.
Ms. Jackson, nice to meet you.
Yes, and Shirley, your beautiful wife. Shirley, we're so glad to have you all on the set. And we are going to get back with Susan in a few minutes. And Susan, we're glad that you stayed on the set with us. But we want to start with the president and tell us a little bit about living in Avion Village and about being president of the board. What an exciting time that is.
It is. It's a wonderful place to live. My wife and I, when we got married, she was living there in the village.
Yes.
And between us, we have 6 children, and there just wasn't quite enough room to house that many children.
All right.
So we moved out and got a home in North Grand Prairie at that time.
Okay.
And we used to always jokingly say, well, when we get rid of all the kids, we would move back to the village.
Yes.
And we finally managed to get rid of all of them and get them married off. And,
Yes, yes.
And
now you're back at the village.
We're back in the village.
And you
yes.
love it.
Love it. There's no better place to live. And I really didn't have an inkling of getting on the board or becoming the president of the board. But I was talking to Miss Shuffler one day, and time was coming around for members to put in for their candidacy to run
Yes.
for the board. And she suggested I ought to do that. And so after a little thought and talked to my wife, I decided, well, I would try and see
Is
if I could
this
get
your
on the
second
board.
presidency?
Yes, I'm this second-term presidency.
Second-term presidency.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. So after being on the board 1 year as a director, then the second year I was elected president of the board, and then again president of the board last year. So it's a wonderful place to live. We have great people to work with on the board.
They're all volunteers?
All volunteers from the village that work on the board, and it's a good staff of people. They're all conscientious about the needs of the village and what we need to do and stay within our budget that we confine ourselves to. And we've managed to do this very well. It's been a real rewarding experience, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Great. Now, Shirley, does that take him away from you a lot of the time when he goes to these board meetings and then has a lot of responsibility dovetailing, or do you aid and abet him in that?
No, it doesn't take away from it.
Yes.
Because first of all, I feel that every time he does something concerning the village, in the long run, it's going to benefit everybody.
Yes.
But we've got so many grandkids, they keep me occupied.
They keep you busy. All right, and when you moved into Avion the first time and didn't have Mr. Childs as your partner, where did you move from to come into that building?
I moved from Arlington.
Moved from Arlington, and were you working at the plant?
No.
You weren't. That was past the plant time then, wasn't it? Oh,
Yes, it
right.
was.
Yes. And of all the amenities that you have, pardon me, at Avion, what is your favorite thing in Avion Village? The camaraderie, the unity, or the fellowship, or what?
We've got wonderful people living in there. You want to get around and meet all of them, but sometimes that's just impossible to meet them, you know, one-to-one on a very intimate base and really get to meet them. But we have got some wonderful people in there. They care about one another. The neighbors, it's like the old-fashioned neighborhoods. Everybody knows everybody, except we don't know everybody's business.
Yes. Oh,
you know.
That makes a difference, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, but they're always willing to help you. If you get in a bind, they're there. They don't hesitate. They're always there to help you out if you need something and you're in a bind.
Well,
The camaraderie of the village is like we live on one side of the village, the Parkers live on the other side of the village, but we're all neighbors.
Yes.
And we're all friends. And it's a wonderful feeling.
that's wonderful. I want to thank y'all for sharing with us that, because we need to get back to Susan now and cut a little rug here about, I believe you've applied for that state marker. How long did it take you to research?
Well, I was working on it when you contacted me in '94. And you had so much of the work done, and then Dr. Sylvan, had so much of it done, and with her help, we put it together and submitted it the first time in the early part of '95, which they sent it back to us from the county. Then rewrote it again, added some things, redid our punctuation, sent it back for another grade, and nope, we don't have enough information. So we have submitted it. This was the 5th time we submitted it. Finally, the county commission accepted it and forwarded it on to the state. It only took the state 30 days to decide
How wonderful.
that was
Just perfect.
perfect for their program. We have submitted the inscription to them. We've okayed it. Everybody said that's fine with them. It's now waiting in line to go to the foundry. We plan to have a party
Great.
and celebrate Avion Village and its 58 years. We were hoping that we would get the marker by May of 1999. That would have made it 58 years exactly, because they started in May of 1941. But it doesn't look like we're going to have it until maybe July or August.
Yeah, but you're going to have a party anyhow.
We're going to have a party.
That is great.
We will have the Grand Prairie Historical Society, the Dallas County Historical Society. We've already had our state representative and the mayor of our city said he would be more than happy to officiate. Ray Allen, our state representative, you've told me you would come.
Yes.
And we will have a number of other people that have said they would try and come if they can work it into their schedule. You know, some people can't promise that far ahead to get from Austin to here.
I'm so glad that you have that now cinched, because there's one other thing that you've done for your patrons of Avion Village that is second to none. As far as I know, you're the largest hood that has completely removed all of the dangerous cottonwood trees from Avion Village. Tell us about that and how many. I need to document that because I have a purpose.
We had Mr. Childs, I brought it to his attention, an article by Susan Henson. And then there was the safety, I can't think of the name of it, excuse me, it's gone out of my mind, that you were pioneering through the safety program to get those trees out, because you cannot tell that these trees are going to kill somebody. They're killer trees because they rot from the inside out. I have somewhere, I didn't get them out, I should have. Here, pictures where you can see, well, this is a stump of the tree.
Yes.
You can see that the whole outside of the tree looks fine.
Looks healthy, doesn't it?
Looks beautiful. okay? And then you cut it down and there's this big rotten spot. But the ones that are really scary
Oh, my.
are these,
Yes.
that the whole inside is rotten. The whole heartwood is gone, and when you start cutting, they start splitting and falling.
Oh, they do. And they could have fallen on your homes in Avion Village.
Well, the point that I had, and I have just a number of pictures of where they're beginning to rot, even the younger trees,
Yes.
they were saying, oh, don't cut those, they're not right yet. This tree was about 10 years old. This tree is about 50 years old.
Yes.
And
How many did we
this
cut
tree
down
was
altogether?
about 5 years old.
But it started rotting already.
It
didn't
has started rotting in the center at 5 years.
How many did you remove?
187, I believe. We spent 74,000 plus change. That's dollars, not cents. On cutting down and disposing of trees.
Yes.
With your help of getting us free dumping rights because of the safety program, it would have cost us more. But since the city of Grand Prairie, with your urging, they weren't going to let us use the dump until I talked with you and you cleared it way for us. You are an asset to Grand Prairie.
Thank you. Thank
We
you.
really
I'm just so thankful
You
that for
are.
the safety of the people in Avion Village that you have
It's a
removed those.
moral responsibility. I feel like it was a moral responsibility when you brought it to my attention and Susan Henson brought it to my attention for me to take it to the board of directors, because we are our brother's keepers in Avion Village and in the whole world.
Yes.
More so in Avion Village. But it's like I said, the board couldn't look themselves in the face if the next storm that came up, one of those fell on a house and killed someone like it did that child in Austin.
Yes.
I was concerned about that when I read the article in the Dallas paper, and coincidentally, the same time, we had the same thoughts, and she brought it to the board, and we proceeded from there.
You were ready for that idea,
Yes,
weren't
ma'am.
you?
Yes,
Oh,
ma'am.
that is really great. Well, I want to thank y'all for bringing all of the wonderful things that you've brought us and your memories of Avion Village. And when you get your marker, we want to have another set too.
Oh, yes.
So maybe we can bring the cameras on site like we did when you got your number 41 Grand Prairie Significant
that'd be
Landmark. And Susan, thank you for all the good work that you do for the folks that live there. It's a magnificent and a wonderful place. It's going to be a nationally recognized landmark one of these days, because after we get the state, then we're not going to rest
right.
easy, are we?
That's
We want
right.
to be a nationally recognized site.
Good. Well, I want to thank y'all so very much for being here. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.